Policy, empathy, and tone. That's where Georgia's Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan wants the Republican Party to focus. Georgia was home to some of the most prominent Republican opposition to baseless claims of widespread fraud in the 2020 presidential election. Duncan joined Republican Governor Brian Kemp and GOP Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in declaring the election fair and square, something that puts him at odds with former President Trump and other Republicans across the country. Georgia Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan joins me now to talk about the ideas in his new book, GOP 2.0, How the 2020 Election Can Lead to a Better Way Forward for America's Conservative Party. Lieutenant Governor Duncan, welcome.
Thanks, Elaine. Great to be with you.
So you are pitching the idea of a GOP 2.0 and pushing for a focus on policy, empathy, and tone. We are speaking at a time where political debate is not even based, though, on a common set of facts. So realistically, how do you see things getting to a place where people can talk about these loftier ideals?
Yeah, I think a majority of Americans really look at their elections as looking forward and not looking back. I want to, once again, for the GOP to cast a vision of promise and opportunity. I think our policies make sense in a majority of households across this country. And quite honestly, that's what's driven me to write the GOP 2.0 book is we need to embrace the things that we do well as Republicans, but we certainly need to look at opportunities to improve, such as the way we approach empathy and also our tone. Our tone has absolutely been atrocious of late, and I think it's cost us votes all over the country.
What do you mean specifically?
Well, I think that if we're going to truly lead a country, we can't use 280 characters on Twitter to do it. I think we need to make sure that we tackle the tough issues and are willing to talk about the tough issues. If we talk about empathy, I think too often empathy looks like in campaigns on both sides of the aisle, putting the right person in the right spot in an ad 2 weeks before an election. I think empathy means sitting at the kitchen table with that single mom with 2 kids and 2 jobs and asking her what you got to do to improve her life. And she's going to tell you make the neighborhood safer and make the schools better. I think we're good at that as Republicans.
So I understand the focusing on the future, but a new Politico Morning Consult poll shows 3 out of 5 Republicans believe the 2020 election should, quote, probably or definitely be overturned. So while you and other Republicans may want to look ahead, the 2020 election in many ways has become this litmus test. So how does that shape elections going forward, particularly the midterms?
Yeah, certainly we as Republicans have got to turn the page and move on. The 2020 election was not rigged. We didn't lose because of conspiracy theories. We lost because we didn't get enough votes in the right places, and that's our fault. But we can fix that. We can wake up and turn the page and try to approach this in a different angle. If we dwell on the past, we're going to guarantee that we hand off the keys to the White House to a Democrat again in 2024. And, you know, I just spent this past week in New Hampshire with my wife talking with voters, and I think there's a real true, energy behind moving on. Certainly in New Hampshire there was. I know in Georgia we're starting to hear conversations about wanting to turn the page because leadership, I think people gravitate towards leaders that have this innate ability to kind of predict the future. And I think that's what GOP 2.0 does. It predicts the future. It predicts a winning model as we look forward.
So Georgia became ground zero in the Republican-led pushback against former President Trump's claims of widespread election fraud. Yet Georgia is one of a handful of Republican-led states passing bills under the banner of election integrity. So can you explain to people, are those 2 ideas contradictory? Why or why not?
Well, during our 10 weeks of hyper-focus between the election in November and the runoffs on January 5th, where we unfortunately lost 2 Republican Senate seats, I think both Democrats and Republicans learned some ways that we could become more efficient. And certainly we included some of those, a majority of those ideas in some of the election reform bills that we took on in the legislature this past session. There was a couple of steps I didn't think were timely, I didn't think made sense. Taking away Brad Raffensperger's responsibilities on the state election board, I thought was a punitive swipe. I thought trying to take steps at trying to make food and water even more illegal than it already was just an overreach. But a majority of the bill did make sense, and I think Democrats and Republicans agreed on a majority of those measures.
I know our time is running short, but very quickly, do you think that the Republican tent is big enough for you and former President Trump, and what are your plans moving forward?
Well, I've been a Republican my entire life, and I'm not going anywhere, and it's going to take somebody bigger and stronger than Donald Trump to force me out of my party. My plans are to focus intently on healing and rebuilding the Republican Party and making sure we can get a Republican in the White House in 2024.
You're running for election down the road, yes or no?
I certainly hope to be in elected office again, but right now I'm not running again for re-election for Lieutenant Governor because I want to have a conversation with America about how to heal and rebuild this party.
All right, Georgia Lieutenant Governor Geoff Duncan, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Elaine.